Have you ever wondered why some veterans get approved for secondary conditions while others get hit with that big fat denial letter? Well, most of the time it's not the evidence. It's the way you say it. The VA looks for specific language, key phrases that connect your secondary condition to your service-connected one. So in this video, I'm giving you the top 5 statements that win secondary claims every time. These are tried and true phrases you can use in your personal statements, buddy statements, or medical nexus letters, and they make the difference between denied and approved. They make a huge difference. The number 4 statement, it's clean, it's pure, it's simple, and it'll bring the Benjamins. The number 1 statement, it's the absolute peak, it's the top, it's the pinnacle, and it contains this service connection trifecta all wrapped into it. Stick around till the end for claim advice. But as always, do me a favor. Help me help you. I realize you can just skip to the end, find out what the 5 statements are, and move on with your day. But the real meat of helping me help you is what is being said and not what is written. So give me 20 minutes or less, and I'll give you enough information to put you closer to or in that 100 club. I'm Mr. X. I'm the guy behind the guide giving you all the information you want to know and need to know about the VA claims process. And this is the VA top 5. All right, kicking it off here. Statement number 5. My condition was caused or aggravated by. Okay, now that phrase, caused or aggravated by, is gold. That's the VA's exact language from 38 CFR 3.310, which covers secondary service connection. So, to give you an example of how to use that or have your examiner or doctor use it, something as simple as my migraines were aggravated by my service-connected condition of tinnitus. Okay? So that's the statement that they're going to make. They're going to have to provide the evidence that backs it up. We're going to talk about some of that a little bit later on. But in the end, you've spoke the VA's language. It tells them that there's a link, either on a direct basis or by aggravation, that they have to then explore. Okay, so using that phrasing every time in your statements, in your doctor's statements, nexus letters, your buddy statements, whatever. Okay, anyone who's a medical professional making that determination, you're going to want to include that. Hey, think of it this way. The number 1 condition was aggravated by your primary service-connected condition. Doesn't matter what it is. Migraines aggravated by tinnitus. Your knees were aggravated by your service-connected back condition. So in the end, it's kind of a cause and effect type statement here. Okay, you have your service-connected condition, and you have to show that your now secondary condition was either caused or aggravated by the primary condition. You do that, and you're going to get service connection granted. Guaranteed. Statement number 4. I first noticed my symptoms, whatever they are, your secondary condition, after my service-connected condition began. I first noticed symptoms after my primary condition began. Now, why does this matter? Well, because the VA loves timelines. If your secondary issue shows up after your primary one, that can go to help establish causation. And this is one of the things that is kind of lost when applying for secondary service connection. So if you weren't diagnosed, let me give you an example. So if you weren't diagnosed for sleep apnea until, November 1st, 2025, and you were diagnosed with PTSD 1 month later on December 1st, 2025, then there's no way that sleep apnea is going to be secondary to PTSD. I mean, I say no way, but the likelihood is extremely, extremely low, because that would be then the primary condition, the sleep apnea. Now, there are exceptions to every rule. For example, PTSD, it's not like a light switch. It doesn't just go on and off. So prior to that, for secondary service connection to be granted, you would have to establish that, hey, your symptoms of PTSD, while it wasn't diagnosed until 1 month later, those symptoms began many years prior, and it resulted or accumulated or came to that diagnosis 1 month later. But essentially the point is the primary condition has to be the diagnosed condition prior to the secondary one, if that makes sense. Okay. Another example here. So I began experiencing anxiety and panic attacks after my tinnitus symptoms started. So that's simple, it's powerful, it's time linked. You're showing the VA a logical chain of cause and effect. Okay? So the thing to remember, primary to secondary. One of the things about, and I'm going to go off the chain here a little bit. So ABCs always be selling, right? Well, there's the kind of the ABCs of service connection, okay? Especially when it comes to primary and secondary relationships. Now, you might be able to show it once, that causation once, and that might be enough to get a nexus statement and get service connected. But in the event that it's not, you got to show that causation from primary to secondary many, many times over. And the more you can do that in different ways, different statements, and using different verbiage, goes to show and cement your claim to the VA. Statement number 3. It's going to seem similar to number 4, but it is slightly different. Okay. Statement number 3. My primary condition directly impacts my secondary condition because ... All right. So this is your why statement. And it's one of those statements that raters absolutely love because it shows you understand the relationship. For example, my chronic back pain directly impacts my sleep because I wake up multiple times a night due to pain. Or something like, my tinnitus impacts my anxiety because the constant ringing increases my stress and irritability. So that explanation gives the rater the context. You're not just saying that the two conditions exist. Okay, that's evidenced in the records or in the diagnosis and the medical evidence that's submitted or already in your file. But you're explaining how one of these conditions makes the other one worse. And that's a secondary condition. Okay, there's another step further, if you're already service connected or if it was service connected prior, it could be aggravation of it as well. Okay, your primary, your service connected condition of tinnitus aggravated your non-service connected condition of anxiety disorder, for example. And that could lead to service connection even if it was diagnosed prior. Okay, so back to the ABCs. Another primary to secondary relationship that you're showing here. Okay. Coming in at number 2, my doctor has explained that these conditions share a medical connection. So you do not have to be a medical expert, but you do need to indicate that the expert exists. Mentioning that your doctor explained or noted a link allows the VA to see that medical reasoning supports your statement. So if your doctor or medical professional writes that phrase in their opinion, you've checked one of the biggest boxes for service connection. Also, if you're requesting a nexus letter, tell your provider to use that exact line, the at least as likely as not. VA loves seeing that. Okay? Don't let them write something that, hey, they could be related or that these conditions are possibly related. Okay, so they're looking for the causal link because of the primary condition that then leads to the secondary. Not a could be, it has to be a causal link. So if you can attach a short note or nexus letter from that provider, even a one-sentence confirmation, such as, hey, the veteran's hypertension is likely aggravated by PTSD-related stress, that can be the decisive thing. So essentially, get your doctor's statement or and I put professional, so any professional opinion. What you're trying to get is the nexus in writing. Now, I know many, many doctors who won't provide that nexus. They just won't. At which point, I get it. I would be incredibly frustrated because if they tell you that, hey, these conditions are related, but they won't put it on paper, then how good is their opinion? Right? At least that's my thinking. And that would be something, if you're going to your private healthcare provider, we're going to assume it's not at the VA, because I know that a lot of their doctors and examiners don't like to do it for a number of reasons. So if you go to your private healthcare provider, ask them to provide a statement linking the two conditions using the at least as likely as not phrasing, then that's going to go a long way to show the nexus. Now, as I mentioned, if they don't want to give that statement, you can't force them, right? But what I would suggest, and I'm all about politely pushing back, okay? If you're meeting with your doctor, you ask him for a statement, he's like, well, I'd rather not, and he gives you one of those things, then I would say, look, you're telling me that these conditions are linked. I'm trying to get compensated for this disability, but if you're not going to put it on paper or not willing to put it on paper, then what does that tell me? And then see what the doctor says. Now, if they won't write a nexus statement, okay, they have to keep notes of the visit there that you made, treatment records. You can ask them then, hey, if you won't write me a nexus statement, then will you include in your, in your notes there that are going to go in your records, hey, that if you want to have them note that these conditions are related, or that, the hypertension is at least as likely as not aggravated by the PTSD-related stress, then you can request those treatment records and submit them to the VA. Either way, it kind of works because it shows that a medical professional made that determination. And if they don't want to provide that nexus statement, which is fine, then if they put it in their evidence or the exam notes, then you can submit those to the VA and still accomplish the same thing. And number one, my favorite statement that wins secondary claims every time, because of my service-connected condition, whatever that is, I now experience, your secondary symptoms or your secondary disability. Now, this phrase does two things. It links your current problems to your existing rating. And it also shows functional impact, or how it affects your daily life. Let me give you an example. So, because of my service-connected knee injury, I now experience lower back pain from years of limping. It's affected my gait. It's affected my walking. Okay. Another example of that is because of my tinnitus, I now experience anxiety and trouble sleeping. I have a difficult time focusing, concentrating. Okay. Cause and effect statements. Now the single sentence here, it hits the VA's 3 key requirements. It's the trifecta. Shows, that the service-connected condition, the primary condition is there, that there's a causal link, and that there's a current functional impairment. Okay? And that's what makes that statement a complete winner, because it encompasses or encapsulates everything. Tell them about your primary condition, you got a secondary one, and how it affects you. Essentially, ABCs here. Okay? It's just another way to show that your primary condition caused your secondary one. Now, as a bonus tip here, what I would try to do, and I wouldn't write them all out, one statement after another, one line after another, because it might kind of get lost in there. But if during your exam, if on your claim, you can incorporate many of those sayings, phrases into your DBQ, into, if you go for an exam, and let's say you're getting a back exam or a knee exam, you say, hey, due to this, I now experience that. Due to my knee pain, my back pain hurts. due to my knee pain, after I walk for an hour, it starts to hurt so much that I start to walk funny. As I walk funny, my back starts to hurt. And then my other knee hurts. I mean, you're just showing that the primary condition has caused the now secondary one. So, as you're developing your plan for your next claim, you're going through these statements and looking how you can use or write it out. Okay, remember that winning the secondary claim isn't about luck. It's about the language. Use your words. Say what the VA needs to hear, clearly, confidently, and backed by evidence. I would caution you not to say, well, you have to accept this. Because anyone reading that says, well, I don't have to accept anything, right? That's just kind of the natural thing. But point, direct, and show how the secondary condition is caused by the primary one. All right, claim advice. So on one of my last videos, I don't know if it was the one I just put out or the one from a week ago, I had a comment asking to explain or make a video about 38 CFR 3.309 and talking about the presumptive conditions related to it in the first part of it. So that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this in a way that's not nauseating. I'm going to do my best. Here we are at 38 CFR 3.309. Okay, very first thing says the following diseases shall be granted service connection, although not otherwise established as incurred or aggravated by service, if manifested to a compensable degree within the applicable time limits under 38 CFR 3.307. Okay, so let's scroll up. 38 CFR, went too far, 3.307. Talks about presumptive service connection for chronic tropical or prisoner of war related diseases. Okay, and it goes into herbicides, Camp Lejeune, and all the other things here. So, couple important factors about 38 CFR 3.307 to qualify for presumptive service connection. The veteran must have served for at least 90 days or more during a war period or after December 31st, 1946, which basically means most people. Now, the requirement of the 90 days service means active, continuous service within or extending into or beyond a war period. Okay. Most of the time, if you served for any time after training, after boot camp, then you're going to meet this requirement. Okay. So the next part of this requirement, okay, comes down here to chronic diseases. So the VA service connects for chronic diseases. It says the disease must have become manifest to a degree of 10% or more within 1 year. And now this mentions, don't get confused by Hansen's or leprosy, tuberculosis, because most people don't have Hansen's disease or tuberculosis, but those have different requirements. Okay. So for example, tuberculosis within 3 years or multiple sclerosis within 7 from the date of separation. So essentially what it's saying here in 38 CFR 3.307, you have to have 90 days of service, and it has to be within a year after leaving service, and it has to be, your condition has to be to a compensable 10% degree or not. Now you can look in 38 CFR Part 4, okay, because that's going to tell you all the diseases, and it can tell you and show you if you meet the criteria for a compensable evaluation. But essentially, all of these diseases here are ones that can be granted service connection if diagnosed within a year after service, and it's compensable. So if it wasn't diagnosed, you're going to have some private treatment records depending on how far back it goes. But here we're talking about anemia, arteriosclerosis, arthritis, brain hemorrhage, CVAs, cerebral vascular accidents as part of it, kidney diseases, cirrhosis. It just goes down the list of all these diseases that could apply. Leukemia, nephritis, kidney issues, other organic diseases of the nervous system. Okay, that goes all the way into it. Now, 38 CFR 3.309 specifically brings up radiation, talks about herbicide exposure. If you scroll down further here, and then it ends with Camp Lejeune. But essentially, as long as you have one of these conditions at the top, it was diagnosed, and your symptoms were compensable within a year of service, then you can be qualified for presumptive service connection. All right, wrapping it up here. Again, remember, winning a secondary claim isn't about luck. It's about the language you use. Say what the VA needs to hear clearly, confidently, and backed by evidence. Do me a favor, though. If you watch this video, feel like I gave you an idea or a statement that you can use in your next claim, then you owe me a thumbs up. Drop me a comment. Let me know which statement has worked best for you over the years. What has worked best for you, and if there's something else that you've used that's worked, let me know what it is. As always, please subscribe for more no-fluff VA claim tips, broken down with a little humor and some honesty. I'm Mr. X. Thanks for being with me, and this is the VA Top 5.